what we have done thus far is really amazing. And it was because we were smart and because we were unified. And because we did that, we averted tragedy. Let's just remember where we were, right? Remember where you were before you take a step forward. We had the virus that attacked us from Europe. The virus was coming. They now say, the experts now say, the geniuses now say, the virus came from Europe in January and February. And you know what? No one knew. No one knew, with all the sophistication, with all the public health organizations, with that whole alphabet soup of agencies. Nobody knew the virus was coming from Europe. Everybody's looking at China, and the virus is coming from Europe. Why? Because by the time we moved, the virus had traveled from China to Europe. And then people are getting on flights from Europe coming to New York. 2 million travelers. 2 million travelers came from Europe. We had no idea. So New York, the East Coast, people were landing at JFK. They were landing at Newark Airport. And that's where the virus came from. January, February, March. Nobody knew. European travel ban goes into effect mid-March. It's too late. It was already here. Okay. Let's learn the lesson going forward. But that was the situation. Those were the cards we were dealt. That's why New York had such high numbers. Not because there's anything special or different about New York, but because New York is where the European flights were coming in, and we didn't know. That was the situation that we were handed. They then say, well, we project hospitalizations to be 120,000. I said, 120,000? You know how many hospital beds we have in this state? 50,000. How can we have hospitalizations of 120,000 if we only have 50,000 beds, counting every bed in the entire state of New York? If you could coordinate every bed, you have 53,000 beds. And they projected 120,000. So, scrambled to try to get more hospital beds. But the only real course was you have to reduce the infection rate. How do you reduce the infection rate? You have to close down, stop people from spreading, stop gathering, stop density. We did that. Otherwise, thousands more people would have died. Thousands more would have died. That is not rhetorical. That is not dramatic. That is a factual statement. Thousands more people would have died. We made that happen. We changed that trajectory. I didn't even know it was possible at one time. When this started, we were at a truly bad and frightening place. If we didn't change the trajectory of this virus, and we had 120,000 people show up at our hospitals, we would have made the situation in Italy look like a walk in the park. We were really at a very, very bad place. Again, through no fault of our own. Virus came from Europe. Whoever would have figured that? Somebody should have, but above my pay grade. We changed the trajectory dramatically by what we did. And that was smart. But we have to stay smart. And we have to stay united. You look at what we've done. New York, the cases are now on the decline. You look at the rest of the nation outside of New York, the cases are still on the incline. We took the worst situation in the nation and changed the trajectory, so now we're on the decline. The rest of the nation, the cases are still on the incline. That is because of what the people in this state did. If you had said, when we started this, yes, we have more cases than anyone else. Yes, we had this European virus attack us and nobody expected it, but we're not only going to change our trajectory, we're going to change the trajectory more dramatically than any place else in the nation. And when you look at the nation compared to New York, you're going to see us on the decline, the rest of the nation on the incline. People would have said it was impossible, but we did it. But we have to stay smart. On this next phase, we have to learn from the mistakes that others have made. And we're not the first to reopen. And that's a good thing, because you can look around and learn. Other countries reopened too fast. They didn't have controls in place. And they reopened, and then they had to slow down or they had to stop. We don't want to do that. We want to monitor our reopening, so if there's any change, we can immediately calibrate it. Some states have not coordinated their actions. So you have one county doing this, another county doing this. You've confused the general public. And by the way, Monroe County cannot open in and of itself. Onondaga County cannot open in and of itself. Albany County cannot open in and of itself. There is no county-by-county plan here. It has to be coordinated, and it has to be at least in a region. And we did that. Other states didn't. It was smart. And there's one set of rules, and the public has to understand the set of rules. Some states are opening even though they haven't met the CDC guidelines, which I don't even know how that happens. The federal government says, here are the CDC guidelines, which are basic health guidelines. Some states don't meet those guidelines, and they're opening anyway. Well, there's a lot of pressure to open. I know, but pressure doesn't mean you act unintelligently, right? Some states opened and then saw a rush of people from surrounding states. We've talked about that here, the concept of an attractive nuisance. Finger Lakes opens. You can't open up an attraction or a site that will be attracting people from outside the region, and then you have a problem you never encountered, right? So that's something to watch. And some places never really made the people part of the plan. And that is a fundamental mistake. Because we are not at a point where government is going to solve anything, frankly. This is people who are solving the problem. Personal opinion as opposed to facts. I did one thing right as governor that I'm proud of. I got the people involved in this situation to a greater degree than they have been involved probably in modern history. Probably in modern history. From day one, this was of such a magnitude that unless people engaged and understood and bought into this, government was impotent. State government can't enforce any of these things that we did. Stay in the house, close every school, close every business. State government can't enforce that. People had to understand the facts, and people had to engage in governing themselves in a way they hadn't in decades. I don't know what happened. I'm still trying to figure out when government got to a place, or when society got to a place where people would accept the lack of professionalism from government, the lack of competence from elected officials. I don't know when government became so political, and it all became about rhetoric rather than actual competence. But it happened somewhere along the way. That government could not handle this situation. People had to get engaged. People had to be informed. And that's the one thing I did right. Now, they got engaged because it mattered. This is not an abstract issue. You're talking about people's lives and people's health and the health of their children. So they were interested. They were engaged. But they were also informed. And I worked very hard every day to make sure they knew the facts. Trust the people. Lincoln, right? An informed public will keep this country safe. True. And that's exactly what happened here. And that's what we're going to continue to do. People need to be part of this. The whole plan that we're outlining today is all down. It's online. It's in a book. People need to understand exactly how we do this second phase. Just the way they understood how we were going to get over that mountain and how we were going to flatten the mountain, they have to understand now how we reopen. And they have to be part of it. Understand the plan. Hold me accountable. Hold me accountable. Hold your local officials accountable. But people have to be part of it. And they have to know the facts and know what we're doing. Because it's going to come down to how people react and how people behave. And if they understand what we're doing, they will do it. Just as I couldn't enforce any of this on day one, the local officials are not going to be able to enforce it either. Nobody's going to mandate personal behavior. People have to wear a mask. People have to be smart when they show up at work. People have to be smart when they shop. They have to understand this is not the floodgates are open. Go back, do everything you were doing. Be smart. Nobody's going to protect your health but you. No one's going to protect your children's health but you. Well, children aren't affected. Oh, really? That's another fact that they're going to change on us. Now we're worrying about, we have 93 cases that we're investigating of young children who have COVID-related diseases. So this is about keeping yourself smart and keeping yourself healthy and keeping your family healthy. We'll do everything we can. But you have to be New York tough. Smart is the first word after tough. United, disciplined, loving. Thank you for being here. Any questions?
Governor Cuomo, what will Friday look like May 15th? Can people just report for work at a construction or manufacturing company that's qualified to open at 9 a.m., start a business? And can a whole staff return, or who will give those answers?
That is going to be, as I said, this is now a shift, right? We're sort of going from phase one, which was basically a state-controlled, one set of rules all across the state. That was phase one. This reopening phase is locally driven, regionally driven, and regionally designed. So the businesses that can open are the businesses that are approved by that region and approved with these conditions, right? Every business that reopens is going to have to meet certain conditions. The state set a certain number of conditions. Local governments may add additional conditions to those businesses and how they open. And that has to be done on a region-by-region basis.
They'll get that information sometime prior to Friday.
Yes.
Governor,
Yes.
how long do you anticipate being at each phase? You know, obviously a lot of the big businesses in our area, in any area, is phase two. So how long do you anticipate it taking to get to that point?
You can, it will be determined by the facts and the numbers as you go along, right? You are more of a visual person. You're turning a valve, increasing the economic activity. Your question is, how fast can we open the valve? You have a dial right next to the valve that says infection rate. You have another dial that says hospitalization rate. You can open that valve as fast or as slow to keep that infection rate below 1.1, which is what they call outbreak. If it hits 1.1, it means the virus is increasing exponentially. So watch that dial, watch the hospitalization rate, and the timing of phase one, phase two, phase three, it's determined by those two dials. It's determined by those facts. You watch the infection rate, you watch the hospitalization rate as fast as you can come online without increasing the virus spread to outbreak or increasing the number of deaths. then that's how fast you reopen the economy.
Will you shut it if it's too fast?
The local region has a control room and a circuit breaker, we call it, to stay with the graphic physical metaphor. Circuit breaker, if you see those dials going into the red zone, if you're really closely watching the dials, you wouldn't have to turn the valve off. You would just slow the valve a little bit, depending on how well your dials are calibrated and whether you're watching or not. So the best would be just slow instead of off. But if the dials go into the red zone, circuit breaker, turn the valve off until you get the dials back under control. The whole ride across the mountain has been getting the spread of the infection under control, what they call the infection rate, how fast it's spreading. It has to be under 1, which is one person who is infected infects less than one other person, right? You have to keep the infection rate below that, and you have to keep the hospitalization rate at a manageable level. You can't overwhelm your hospitals, period, because then people die, and that is a universal bad thing. You watch those 2 dials, and you calibrate it locally. Well, how fast can you open? Nobody knows. It also depends on how smart you are in the opening. Now, if you open businesses and the employees are smart and the business owners are smart, well, then theoretically nobody should get infected, right? You should be able to go to work, be 6 feet apart from everyone, have the right precautions, nobody gets infected. You do it wrong, you're at the meat processing plants and the poultry processing plants that we've seen across the nation. You open up, everybody goes to one place, a few people have the infection, and now you have 1,000 workers infected. How did that happen? It was improper precautions in the workplace. So you have to, depends on how businesses do, how employees do, and then you watch those dials. As fast as you can reopen. Just watch the dials.
Governor Cuomo, as businesses are coming up with these reopening plans and we move on from phase 1 to phase 2, how long will the businesses in each phase keep these plans in place? Like, say, how long will they have to stay 6 feet apart, or when will it be okay to maybe lift those plans?
It depends on the facts. You'll know. You'll watch. Your basic question is, when do we don't have to worry about the virus anymore? I hope it's tomorrow. I doubt it's tomorrow. It depends on how good we are at reducing the spread and controlling the spread. It's how smart we are. It's our actions, our behavior. That's why I come back to who slowed the spread in the beginning? The people of this state. Nobody else. There was no government action. It was an unprecedented action of the people, presented with the facts, informed and engaged. Hasn't happened in my lifetime. Hasn't happened in my lifetime. I've never seen this situation before, where people actually did what the Founding Fathers thought they would do, that they would really care and really get engaged and really get informed and really act on what they believe. For so many years, what government did was just irrelevant or overly political, or you didn't believe anyone, you didn't trust anyone, so they just tuned it out, right? I have to live my life. I can't watch this sideshow called government politics. Yeah, well, now it's a matter of life and death, and they got engaged. I'll tell you something else gratuitously. I also believe if we actually learn from this moment, we talk about reimagining New York so that we don't just build back, we build back better, and we're going to do that. I also think this is a moment that could change history in this country for the better. You, whoever the you is that started this virus, you had a wake-up call for this country and a moment in history that people have never gone through before. You stopped the country. You stopped the economy. You put, we call it pause in New York, you put people's lives on pause. And everyone went through a period of turmoil and stress and reflection on their own personal lives, their family lives, their whole situation. Government, society, I think this is going to be a reevaluation all across the board. And I think we can be the better for it. I believe that. I believe we individually can be the better for it. I believe my kids are going to be the better for it. I believe I am going to be the better for it. I believe my family is going to be stronger for it. And I believe the state is going to be better for it on an individual and a collective level. And I think people are going to think about society and government differently than they ever did, because it really, really matters now. And they understand how government can make a significant difference in their lives. And it's not going to be a sideshow anymore. They're not going to tolerate it. I believe that. So they were in charge, the people. They accomplished a great, great feat in this state. We had the worst situation in the nation. The worst. And now our numbers are on the decline, and the rest of the country is still on the incline. So what New Yorkers did, nobody could have imagined. If they show that same resolve and intelligence in this next phase, it's up to them. It is up to them.
Governor?
With businesses reopening and schools still closed, there's going to be a need for childcare. Are there guidelines for daycares reopening? I didn't see it on your graph there. When could daycares open?
Yeah, it's a very good point. Look, we said all along, the closing of the schools had a direct impact on what you could do with the businesses, right? And we said you couldn't open all the businesses wholesale without opening schools, because you'd make it very problematic. How do people go to work with their children at home? We said we're not opening schools for the remainder of the academic year. So these business openings until the end of the academic year, you're going to be in phase 1, phase 2. You're not going to have all the businesses open, but arranging child care for those workers who need it are one of the responsibilities of these regional councils. You have to have daycare available, child care available for those workers who now are going to go back to work.
Cuomo, thank you. Can you hear me okay with this thing on?
With the mask?
Yeah.
Leave the mask on.
All right.
For multiple reasons.
You sound like the father of a woman I dated. Yes.
Yeah. The father of the woman you dated was right. And I would make an exception on the I like the boyfriend rule if you were the boyfriend, just so we're clear.
3 key factors for regional reopening: hospitalizations, hospital deaths, new hospitalization rates. You explained that. The one thing is, a lot of our viewers want to see that on a consistent data. They want to be able to see how a region is doing. And we can't seem to get that data. We know that you have it, and it's provided to you. You're kind enough to share it on a statewide basis. But again, this is a regional
Yes, sir.
factor.
You're exactly right.
Wow, thank you. So, if you...
Lightning strikes.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
just when you thought it was impossible.
yeah. So,
Anything can happen once.
yeah. So, if
Blind chicken gets a kernel of corn every once in a while. Go ahead.
all right. So, none of the
all love.
the state health department does have a website where they provide information, but none of those are things, the metrics upon which the data of reopening are based. You have said you've worked very hard every day to make sure that we get information and to hold you accountable. Can you get the state health department to start releasing that information on a consistent daily basis so folks all involved in this can keep track of it and know how we're doing?
Good question, you're right. When can we put up the daily hospitalization rate region by region.
This dashboard that the governor put up today will be public today. So you can go to a website, you'll see how the regions are doing. It gets updated every 24 hours starting today.
One more thing on a business reopening, do they have to submit a plan to the state? in
No,
order
they
to-
do it region by region.
The regions will handle it?
Yes.
Because some were concerned that if there's one agency in charge of this, they may get overwhelmed like the State Department
Yes.
of Labor was. So
Yes.
it's the regional.
Region by
Bob
region.
Duffy will
Yes.
help us with that?
Bob Duffy, Adam Bello, Joe Morelli. Call Joe Morelli. Phone number 202. Thank you very much. God bless you.